We seek to remember. It is our task to never forget the many, many stories of sacrifice, courage, and duty in the lives of American veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs encourages communities across the U.S. to establish Veterans Legacy programs, which will tell the stories of veterans buried with honors at national cemeteries. In 2018 in Knoxville, Tennessee, we launched a productive partnership to do just that, with funding from the VA. Tennessee is fondly called the volunteer state, due to its long traditions of military service and answering the call of patriotism, so this project has special resonance for Tennesseans young and old. Our partnership in Knoxville unites key local institutions, the University of Tennessee Center for the Study of War and Society, and the university's History Department, the East Tennessee Historical Society, the Knoxville History Project, and Knox County K-12 schools. The University of Tennessee's Center for the Study of War and Society was founded over 30 years ago by a beloved teacher and scholar at UT, Dr. Charles Johnson. It was his key insight that war should not be studied only in its technical aspects, but rather in terms of all its impact on society and individuals. This prompted Dr. Johnson to start a project that in fact still continues today, the collection of oral history interviews and documents from American veterans. Program coordinator Cynthia Tinker, herself an Air Force veteran, outlines the center's approach to the interview process.
What is so rewarding and unique about our interviews are we do life course interviews where we get a look at the whole person, their pre-war life, their post-war life, and everything in between.
Clearly, 3 decades of this valuable work was excellent preparation for the work on the new Veterans Legacy program. Center Director and Professor of History, Veas explains.
We were so glad to hear of this opportunity, the Veterans Legacy Program funded by the Veterans Administration. It was as if so much of our previous work had been a preparation for this new undertaking.
We recruited teams of undergraduate researchers from the University of Tennessee. They were eager to get to work delving into the archives and searching the library to track down the details that really bring life to history, the stories of individuals.
I suppose as an undergraduate, what I found most interesting was the fact that we got to conduct actual archival research. That's a facet that I really didn't get in a lot of my other undergraduate classes. No one ever said, go find your own original sources in a library, an archive, or anything like that. It was always the sources have been provided for you, interpret them. And in this case, I get to interpret documents that I find my own curated sources in a way.
I think I really connected to the project when I started seeing women's stories unfolding. I think that there's something that often get overlooked, very intentionally, because they're considered to be sort of background players. And when I started sort of unfolding these stories and getting these pieces and parts to put together, I found these wonderful fleshed out stories that I think need to be written. The most challenging part of this research is that you really have to learn how to get back up when you hit a dead end, which can be very hard when you're shutting down a computer at the end of the night thinking you haven't gotten anything done, and then having to wake up and be like, how do I approach this in a new way so I can get the research I want?
It was meaningful to me because I have in my family history a lot of veterans, and from the Second World War, the First World War, the Civil War, and in a way I felt like I was kind of doing them justice.
Doing history rather than sitting back and being told something to regurgitate.
Undergraduate researchers set out to find stories. And did they ever find stories? Stories like those of Hugh Eckel, a graduate of University of Tennessee who was killed in 1918 in some of the final assaults on the German lines as World War I drew to a close. His heroism meant that he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Once a hometown hero in Knoxville, his memory deserves to be revived now that we are marking the 100-year anniversary of the ending of the First World War. Also honored with the monument are men whose bodies were lost at sea, the men of the USS Indianapolis. That ship was torpedoed by the Japanese at the end of World War II, shortly after delivering its top-secret cargo of the components for the atomic bomb. We recall also Cal Johnson, an African-American entrepreneur who got a start in business by participating in the early establishment of the Knoxville National Cemetery in the aftermath of the Civil War. He is a perfect example of how this site of honor and memory is woven into the local history of Knoxville and our region. Or consider this: marked only by a modest tombstone identical to thousands of others in the cemetery is the grave of the beloved football coach of the University of Tennessee Volunteers, General Robert Neyland. He was a veteran of both World Wars and cherished locally for his football successes. In spite of his fame, he insisted on an ordinary burial and grave marker. So here are the stories that need to be told, retold, and remembered. In fact, the site of the cemetery itself powerfully communicates the past. It was set up in 1863 to give a resting place to those who had fallen in the Civil War battles in and around Knoxville. The cemetery's central arrangement is unusual among national cemeteries, laid out in a circle form, radiating from the flagpole at its center. At another corner is a striking monument, a tower, topped by a statue not of a general or an admiral, but rather by an ordinary Union soldier, recalling shared duty and sacrifice. Now, the 10 acres of this national cemetery contain more than 9,000 graves, including veterans of all of America's wars of the last 1.5 centuries: the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, the First World War, the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, and the more recent conflicts in the Persian Gulf, Iraq, and Afghanistan. These and many other aspects of the history of the cemetery now are accessible to the general public. Among the products of our program was a richly illustrated book, A Brief History of Knoxville National Cemetery, by Knoxville historian Jack Neely. Copies of this book were distributed at our public events. It is also available for free online at the website of the Center for the Study of War and Society. In advance of Memorial Day, we held a public event at the National Cemetery. Memorial Day has a special tie to Knoxville's National Cemetery because some evidence suggests this may be where the tradition of placing flags rather than flowers originated in 1874. Local historian Jack Neely led a tour and gave new insights. Even for some Knoxville-born visitors, this was the first time they had been to this historically important site in their own hometown. On Memorial Day itself, rituals surround the Knoxville National Cemetery grounds. The New York Highlanders who fought at the Battle of Fort Sanders are honored by descendants dressed in the costumes of long ago. In fall 2018, we hosted a teacher's workshop at the East Tennessee Historical Society to take lesson plans out into the schools at all levels. Master teacher Catherine Petko, who created these plans, also carefully aligned them with school standards. These lesson plans tell the stories of particular veterans buried at Knoxville National Cemetery. Afterwards, teacher comments were enthusiastic. Well organized, excellent ideas, amazing lesson plans. A teacher can go right into the classroom and engage students and meet standards. Excellent ideas for incorporating standards in a creative way. Our students will be able to connect locally with global events. Awesome. Ready to use lesson plans specific to standards. After a year of activity in 2018, the work still continues. If you have relatives buried in the Knoxville National Cemetery, please contact us to share your stories and memories. The commands of memory are strong, and we want to do justice to them. That is what we owe.